All right, welcome to our March of 2021 Twin Cities Tableau user group. Yet another edition in our virtual series that never seems to be coming to an end. We do have some hopes of doing a hybrid event in April, but that is still TBD. So more to come on that as we figure that out. So today, we have a couple of awesome presentations. We have Nolan Gaskill from the Radisson Hotel Group, who is giving us a presentation on LOD calculations. And Nolan, if I remember correctly, you said that this was a presentation you gave at TC19, right?
I think it was way back in the 17, actually.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Time is meaningless now anyway, so we can go with 19 and it means the same thing.
Right. Exactly. And then we have Josh Wilson, who is a freelance consultant, and he is going to show us the cool things he's doing with survey data in Tableau. We'll also throw in a couple of get to know members at the beginning and then anywhere where it might seem awkward. And then if we have time, our best thing I learned / group therapy. So start thinking about those things that you've been banging your head against the wall on, spinning your wheels, or if you learned something cool and you want to share it with us, that would be the time to do that. Couple of upcoming events I'm going to call out, and then I'll open it up to the rest of you guys if you have other events that are not on this list. If you have open roles that you're hiring for, we'll just give a few minutes to provide an open forum for people to share opportunities with the community. So March 31st, we have the Power BI Showcase. I believe that is one of their in-person ones. They seem to be alternating between doing it in person at a brewery, I think, in Minneapolis, and then virtually as well. So I think that one is actually an in-person one. And then we have League of Data Leaders on April 6th to talk about recruiting tips and tricks, because it's particularly in the data space, I think it's a tough market. People are seeing a lot of new job opportunities come up, and we kind of always dealt with a little bit of a inequity between the supply and demand in that space, but I feel like it's really exaggerated right now. So that should be a good conversation. April 7th, we have She Talks Data with Emily Woolever. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. And actually, when I was talking about the Power BI Showcase, I think that one is virtually. It's the Power BI meetup on April 8th that is in person at, I think it's the Bald Man Brewery. So sorry, I had that backwards. And then on April 16th is coffee, DataViz Coffee and Donuts. That's the sort of tool agnostic data visualization group that Trisha Duncan and Dave Mathias run here in the Twin Cities. And then I had to put a shameless plug in for the SysTech conference, which is on May 21st. That SysTech is this is a conference that I'm helping to put on. And we have just added a virtual component to it. So if you are out of town or have reservations about attending in person, we do have a virtual passes available. So if you guys, most of these things you can find on Meetup. I'm pretty sure all of them you can find on Meetup. But if you have trouble figuring out how to register for any of these, just hit me up and I'll send you a link. All right, I'll open it up to the rest of the crew here. Does anyone have any announcements, events, job opportunities, anything they would like to share with the group?
Hi, this is Dan Burr. This is my first time joining. And right as of yesterday, I found out we're losing our Tableau person.
Oh no!
And this guy is really, 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 really good. I wanted to share with you his name so you could Google. He's got a lot of public things that he's done. He's got some really cool stuff. His name is Pawan. but he's definitely one of the better. I'm thinking one of the better Tableau people around. But he's in
Awesome.
India, so I think they're hiring someone to replace him. He's from our India group.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a bummer that you
Yeah,
guys lost someone who was really good. It's
yeah,
a tough, so there's a fight for talent right now. So you gotta be paying these people good and treating them well if you want them to stay.
yeah. I think that's what the issue is. I think he got paid more, getting paid more,
Mm-hmm.
better opportunity, more of a supervisory role.
Mm-hmm.
But his name is Pawan Sachdeva, Sachdeva.
Do you wanna chat it in the chat, Dan?
I'd like to. Let me find. Where's the chat?
It should be
Right.
down towards the bottom.
Yeah.
Yes, it depends on, it's just, there's like a little toolbar that, maybe it's under the more section. It should be like a little ellipses that says more.
I just chatted his
Okay.
name.
Perfect.
He's someone to watch out for. He's really good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, Dan.
You're welcome.
And welcome to the group. We're happy to have you. Anybody else would like to share?
Yeah, this is Kate. I'm with SetSite. We are a local provider of retail analysis tools, and we actually have an opening that was just listed on Indeed for a Tableau administrator. So we manage sites for our clients, and we also do dashboarding for them. So we're looking for someone who has strong SQL skills and has maybe worked with Snowflake even in the past to build us some data sources.
Awesome. Is this a full-time FTE or contract position?
This is a full-time position.
Okay. Awesome. If you would like to share, if there is a link, like a link for the job, and if you want to chat that might be a great thing to do. And also, I worked with someone at SetSite. They were a client of mine a while back, and I want to say that the guy's name was Chris Lone. Is he still there?
Yes, Chris is still there.
Okay, awesome. We'll tell him I said hello.
All right.
Okay.
I'll just add one. This is Nolan Gaskill. I just checked. It has not yet been posted. I think we're waiting for a signature, but sometime in the next week there will be a revenue strategy manager position opening up at Radisson Hotel Group. They work closely with my team on the analytics team, really kind of all under the same umbrella, and so be looking for that on Radisson Hotel Group Americas.com in the coming week or so.
Awesome. When that gets posted, Nolan, you could either post it in the Twin Cities Tableau user group on LinkedIn or send it my way, and I'll make sure it gets posted out to all the places.
Will do.
Places. Okay. Anybody else? We got time.
I have something to share.
Yeah.
So this is a little side project that I've been working on. I created a Twitter account that tweets out whenever there are COVID-19 vaccine appointments in the Twin Cities area. And so it'll tweet out like Minneapolis Walmart has appointments on this day, and then it'll have another tweet whenever all the appointments are closed. So if anyone's having troubles getting themselves an appointment or friends or family members, you can check out MSP Vaccine Watch on Twitter, and I can put the link in the chat as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Definitely put that in the chat.
Yeah, and everyone can share to friends and family as well. So just another resource to help people get vaccinated.
Thank you. And are there still restrictions on who can get it right now? Or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It kind of depends on, there's like some age restrictions, and then there's some industry restrictions. But I also heard that I read like on the news that I think they're going to open it up a little bit more next week as well.
Yeah, it's funny because I keep seeing people that at least I'm not aware of would be in a high risk category who are vaccinated, and I'm like, well, I haven't really been jumping on the to the front of the line on that, because I know that there are many more people who need it more desperately than I do. But yeah, it seems like there's just like some sort of weird confusion there.
Yeah, I mean, I've also heard that local Walmarts have like a no-show list, or like a list where it's like, you know, at the end of the day, they have some that'll go to waste. And so, you know, they'll call people in the community that can show up, you know, within 30 minutes or something to get there. So I know a lot of people that have not necessarily calling like Walmart, but have gotten it through, you know, kind of more of like the no waste idea.
That makes sense. Awesome.
So
thanks for sharing that. Okay. Anybody else before we move on to our presentations?
I'll just introduce myself real quick. My name is Justin Carlson. This is my first time on. I work for a company called Allflex out of Northfield and Bloomington. So we very heavy on the Excel in our organization, as many are. So I did get to use Tableau a little bit in a recent pricing project, but I was heavily reliant on a very IT savvy coworker. So I'm looking to dive in and learn as much as I can over the coming months. So happy to join.
Well, welcome, Justin. You gave me a perfect segue into the next section, which is get to know a member, where I take volunteers from the audience to answer these questions. So, so thank you for kicking that off, and welcome to the group.
Thank you.
Let's do one more get to know a member before we start our presentations. So if you would like to, just unmute yourself, start talking, or I can go through the list and pick someone.
Hi, this is Hima. I work in Optum. I joined other meetup. I don't know this is relevant, but I would like to see Tableau side. I would like to move forward on BI tool, Tableaus or Power BI. So I joined this meetup to understand.
So Hima, you said you are a Power BI user trying to switch to Tableau?
No, long back I have used different BI tool, a Clarity Analysis Manager and Business Intelligence little bit. But now I'm looking to move toward a reporting side. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome to the group. We are happy to have you. Okay, maybe we'll have time to squeeze another one of those in here as we transition between speakers, but since
Hi, I am Greg Woods. I am currently a student doing a bootcamp student transitioning into data analysis, and it will be my last meet up before I actually move to the Twin Cities. I'm moving from Boston, and we have a house, and we are moving in late April, so excited to be in this community in my third time being with you all. So I am excited applying for jobs, but I don't have too much experience yet, but I learning a lot. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, Greg. We're happy to have you and hope you learned something as you're trying to break into this space, and good luck with your move. Okay, let's switch things over to Nolan. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Let me get
Okay.
the screen share hopefully going here. All right, you see a PowerPoint slide, I hope?
Yes, we do.
So my name is Nolan Gaskill. I am the commercial BI and analytics manager at Radisson Hotel Group. Had to think about that for just a second because I recently had a change of title. Today we're going to be talking about level of detail calculations. So as Serena had alluded to, this is a talk that I first gave back at the first Tableau conference after Level of Detail came out in 2016. And it's still a topic that I think I see a lot of users struggle with. So thought it might be a good time to dust off the deck, update it a little bit, and through the magic of the internet and virtual meetings as we're doing them today, I'm able to join you out of my home office in Omaha, Nebraska. I am now on my 16th year in some capacity with Radisson or its previous iterations of owners and name changes. I am a avid hockey fan and player, much better fan than I am player, but in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen is a picture of me and 3 of my friends from here in Omaha. We played in a Paul Bunyan themed tournament up in Blaine a couple years ago, back when you could get together with groups of people. I'm also a home brewer. In the middle, that's me showing off a beer that I had won a homebrew contest from, again, when you could get together and drink beers with folks. And on the right are my 2 giant pains in the butt, but kind of awesome huskies. So that's Finn on the left and Coda on the right. They're a handful, but those are my office worker or coworkers these days. So we spend a lot of time together. Tell you a little bit about Radisson Hotel Group. For those of you that aren't familiar, we are one of the largest portfolios of hotels in the world. We represent around 1,100 hotels worldwide. We do have our offices for the Americas headquarters located in the Twin Cities in Minnetonka off of 394 and 494 in the Carlson Towers, if that means anything to any of you. There we are formerly owned by the Carlson.
Hey, Nolan?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you for a minute?
Absolutely.
Like, maybe this is just me, but I'm getting like weird sounds every now and then. It almost like you turned into a robot.
Oh no.
Is anyone else hearing that besides me?
I'm hearing it.
Okay. It almost sounds like there's just some feedback or something in the microphone that's coming. It's not terrible, but it's a little bit distracting. What kind of a microphone are you using?
It's just a
headset?
Plantronics headset, yeah. So
okay, if it gets bad, could we maybe have you try switching just to your computer like your laptop microphone?
Yeah, I was going to say I could also just dial in on my phone and continue to present here. So if that's feel free to stop me here in the next minute. Is it still happening?
It's not happening right now, so I'll keep an eye on it. If it gets bad.
Okay, feel free to interrupt me, and sorry if that was distracting.
No.
So we have been a Tableau shop at Radisson for a number of years now. The earliest that I can find is we were a client starting in March of 2013, and we started out, as probably many of your organizations did, with a single license key, and we've expanded that to a global server deployment where we have hundreds of users both in our corporate offices and our hotels that use dashboards on our server. So neat space to be in right now. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about level of detail calculations, and we're going to look at them specifically through a KPI of Net Promoter Score, which is something that I think many of you will be familiar with, but we'll definitely talk about what that metric is. We'll give you some examples of how to build those calculations, and look at some actual screenshots of examples that we have in production at RHG. So diving right in, what are level of detail calculations? These are going to be used anytime you want to display one level of aggregation of visualization, but do some kind of math or calculation on a different level. They are often used to replace the need for table calculations, and they tend to be a bit more intuitive than table calcs, particularly when you're dealing with a lot of different dimensions. If you're anything like me, when you have to do table calculations with many different dimensions involved, it tends to be really frustrating, and I just end up moving things around until I come up with the right solution. So this kind of gets rid of some of those frustrations, and there's a lot of things you can do with LODs that you just can't do any other way in Tableau. Won't read them off to you, but we will go through a couple of these listed use cases, including averages across segments, bin to aggregates, and how to mix aggregate and disaggregate data. So what defines level of detail within Tableau? On this slide, you'll see everything that's highlighted in red affects your level of detail. which is to say, anytime you were to move a dimension into one of those areas, you're going to add new types of marks to your vids. Another way that you could think about that is to notice the two places on your screen.
Hey, Nolan.
Yep, still having problems?
It's bad. It's
Okay, let me go ahead and pause my video.
Yeah.
Are we in a spot that we want to pause for a minute, or?
Yeah, why don't you either dial in on your phone, do what you need to do.
Yep.
We'll do a get to know a member quick, and while we're waiting for you to hop back. Sound good?
Yep, that works.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna just look for someone real quick in particular.
I can go.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Michelle Mercero. I am with Optum here in the Twin Cities, and I've been using Tableau for probably over 10 years in a reporting capacity, obviously, within the help desk, technical help desk environment. So busy on the reporting team. Fun fact, when I started the reporting team about 10 years ago, our data was not so robust, and it was small enough that we could download stuff to Excel and then use that to feed Access and just run results from there.
Yep.
And then I learned SQL by reverse engineering the Access queries. And then we inherited Tableau when we started using a live chat feature. It came with some out-of-the-box reports, and I was essentially told, you're going to learn this, and so I did.
Awesome.
It's been many years since, so yeah, I really enjoy it. And we do use Power BI a little bit. Some of us kind of started with that, and I'm slowly transitioning, trying to learn a little bit, add that to my toolkit.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. Okay, let's see here. Well, we're still waiting for Nolan. I'm going to pick on my little sister, who may or may not be paying full attention right now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ruby. I'm brand new to Tableau and the Tableau user group.
That's it.
That's it. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be absorbing all that I can from all of you, and I hope to get to know all of you a little bit more.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruby. Yeah, my sister is I'm trying to teach her some things. She actually just signed up for one of the courses from Tableau that's like a fast track to the desktop certification, not the first one, but the second one. So she is really diving in head first. So maybe, Ruby, when you're done with that, you can come back and tell us how it was.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's all week next week, and I'm really excited about it. It's desktop 1, desktop 2 accelerated. So
awesome. Thanks. See you later.
See ya.
Okay, do we have
Nolan is back on his phone.
All right.
I'm echoing in my own ear, so just 1 second. Just gonna unplug this guy.
I think I can just mute.
Is that better? No, I'm on. Sorry, 1 second.
Oops. I think he was logged into both audios.
Yeah, I am.
There we go. Yes, no?
Well, I'm hearing myself at the computer. Sorry. If you want to do something else, I'm going to do that audio.
Okay. Josh, we could switch and have you go. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Let's do that.
Okay. Let me bring up my slides here. One second.
You know, we've had a pretty good track record for not having like major technical issues. It was bound to happen. We had one coming.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. I was kind of looking forward to Nolan's presentation. It sounded, I heard NPS and I thought, oh, that's related to surveys.
We'll have to wait in
hopefully,
suspense.
yeah, hopefully we can get back to it. So yeah, I'm going to talk about survey data visualization in Tableau, and to give you a quick introduction to myself and how I got to be working with survey data. I started my career with Deloitte Consulting, had a variety of roles. I always loved Tableau, and data was kind of something that I was a part of what I was doing, but it was never my primary focus. And then about a year ago, I was just moving back from Germany, and I had a fixed contract with Deloitte in Germany. Came back to the U.S. and decided to take the plunge and start freelancing with Tableau. Stumbled onto a couple of projects where I was working with surveys, and I discovered this field of market research that I realized combined so many of my interests that I always have around data and math, but then also psychology and understanding people and design thinking and storytelling and journalism and all of these different things that I liked. I found that, hey, they actually are found in one sort of industry. So that's what I do now, and I focus mostly on survey data visualization. I'm originally from Ohio, and I live in Chicago now. I've been in Chicago for 12 years, aside from the 3 years that I was in Germany. So today we're going to talk about survey data. I'll show you how to structure and visualize survey data, and I'll use an example to illustrate each step of the process, and also talk about some tips and lessons I learned, at least with this one particular dashboard. And I'm actually going to pull that up right now. So this is a dashboard that I created for, there was like a contest that a few Tableau user groups in Texas put together, kind of like a Makeover Monday type of thing, where they ask people to visualize this survey that they conduct on a yearly basis to see what people wanted to get out of their Tableau user group meetings. And this particular survey, there were 54 respondents. They asked about a number of different demographics, such as their user experience and type of organization that they were from. And so what I did with it, and something that I'll talk about as well, is looking at the different demographics and like how they compared to an average, let's say. And so this is kind of just a quick preview. So I'll come back to this and talk about how I put this together. But I actually would like to do the poll. So I want to ask everyone which topics that you might be interested in, and based on that, I'll kind of adjust. So I think Serena, if you could pull up the poll. There it is. So, and this is you can select more than one, but keep in mind if you select all of them, then it's meaningless. So let me know which ones you are interested in covering during this session. You guys ever read Choose Your Own Adventure books?
I've heard of them, Josh, but I haven't read any.
That's kind of what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. All right, it looks like most everybody has polled. I don't see a lot of activity anymore. So let's give people 10 more seconds. If you haven't voted, go do it right now. Okay. So if I hit end polling, that should give us the results. And we'll do share. Can you guys see the results? Anywhere?
I can see them.
Okay, cool. That was actually the first time we've done this. So it looks like the winner was building visualizations in Tableau.
Okay. Kind of thought that might be the case. Yeah, it's good to know. So I will keep that in mind, and I'll you know, I want to give you guys kind of like an overview of like how background of how to set it up. But then we'll get into more fun stuff with visualization. So just I have 2 slides just to kind of cover like a fundamental concept with survey data. So survey data is very wide because when you get it out of whatever tool that you're working with, you're going to have essentially a column or variable for every question, and often more than one column for every question. And that's not ideal for working with it in Tableau. So what we want to do is we're going to pivot it so that each question is going to have its own section vertically like this. So that means if we had 50 respondents, we started with 50 rows of data. Now we're going to have 50, those 50 repeated. So we would have in this case 350 rows. There is one exception to that, and that is if we are if we want to look at like demographics, for example, where we want to be able to compare, for question 4, what did Hispanic women aged 35 to 44, feel about this particular question? In order to do that, then we want to keep 2 of these, or a certain number of questions, we call them, which could be the demographic questions. And so we'll look at how to do that. So we're gonna do a walkthrough. So this is the data that it came out in this case for the survey. You can see it's very wide. So typically, and this came from SurveyMonkey. So you're going to get this export probably in Excel, and the first thing that we want to do with it is we're going to create a question tab, and that question tab is going to be all about the questions of the survey. It's going to capture, I like to capture the question ID, sub-question ID, and the sub-question ID is what I'll use to actually correspond to every single column. And other things like you could put a category in there if you have different sections of the survey, different types of questions, anything you want to be able to filter on once you get into Tableau, as well as the question text. And if you're using SurveyMonkey, what I typically do for SurveyMonkey is, I'll take these first 2 columns or first 2 rows, and I'll transpose those over here. And so that's where these come from. And then from that, I'll derive these other fields. It can be a little bit tedious, but it's well worth it once you get to Tableau. So that's the first tab that we're going to need is question tab. And then the second is the response tab, which is essentially what came out of the export. But now we're using this sub-question ID as the column headers, and potentially some other cleanup, like we don't need this collector ID, for example. So that's a very, very basic what we would do in Excel to get ready for that. Now coming over to Tableau Prep. So we're gonna take our response. So this is the survey responses. Everything, all the data that's you know, the answers to the questions. And we're gonna bring this in twice. One is going to be for the demographics, and one is going to be for the rest. So what we're going to do with the, let's call this like response demo. We're going to only pick the demographics, which you could either call them Q0 or D1, D2, D3. And we also need the respondent ID. And then in our other response here, we don't necessarily need the demographics. You could include them, but we're going to take them out for now. And now this is where we're going to pivot all of the data. So we're going to take our questions, so our Q1 to our Q7 in this case, going to pivot those. And by the way, I'll send you a link to Steve Wexler's site. He has all kinds of resources for visualizing survey data, and everything I'm doing right now, he walks through in much more detail. So highly recommend that if you are going to be analyzing survey data. Okay, so now we've got our, in this case, we've got, I'm going to call this our sub-question ID because that's what I'm calling it in my question table. And this is just going to be our responses. Okay, and now we're going to join our demographic with our other questions. Going to get rid of so we're joining on the response ID, going to get rid of the duplicate response ID. And then I'm going to pull in the question tab, join it with that. It knows to join it on the sub-question ID. These three Q0s are coming up as red because I added them into the question tab over here. You don't actually need to have them in here, but they're coming up as red because I took them out already over here, so don't need to worry about that. And that's pretty much the gist of it. There's one extra step that we could do to remove nulls. And I have this, I'll put this in the chat later, just so you can do a copy and paste if you're working with survey data. If you're working with a small data set, this isn't a huge deal to eliminate nulls. But it can, if you're working with a larger survey, then it can definitely help a lot. And from there, you know, we could get an output. It's a little bit more involved in terms of what I did in this for this dashboard that I put together. But that's generally kind of the gist of it. And like I said, I'll send you the resources if you really want to dive into that. Okay. So let's take a look at how I put this together, and again, kind of focusing on the demographics, because this is what I like to do is have the ability to kind of look at one demographic group or another, and just be able to kind of filter and go back and forth. So I'm using a parameter to do that. But if we were, let's say we wanted to kind of create that, at least the ability to be able to flip through those. So this is what's going to come out of our Tableau prep, and we can see we got our like our question ID, and we have our question text, and the reason that we can do that is because we did that pivot, that we can look at all of these questions now. We can look at how people responded, and we could see we did a count of the respondent ID, count distinct to be safe. We can start to see, and we can even do a bar chart. We start to see kind of how people are responding. Let's put the response up here. There we go. People are responding to each of our questions. And because we did question type, we scroll down here, we have this one, which was a open-ended question. We can take that out because maybe we don't want to see that if we're looking at, we want this, just the count of how many people responded to each response. Now, what I will do in order to look at the demographics, I use a parameter. So I could call this demo select. It's going to be a string. Here I'll put in, let's say, org size, all the different demographics that we might want to flip between. And you might notice I actually brought in a few more than just those three. So we could also bring in, title. And then we're going to create a corresponding calculated field. It's going to be case statement. So if our demo select parameter, if we've picked let's see, what do we say, org size, then we want the Q0 org size. Type when we did title, right? So title, then set the title, call it demo select calc. Now, if I show my parameter, so I can see the different demographics that I picked there. And I'm going to put my demo select calc. I'm going to put it in color. And now this is going to show me, okay. And show my color legend. I can see the breakup between the different cohorts for this particular demographic org size. I can flip it to org type. I get all my org types for each question or title as well, or whichever demographic we want to look at. So that's the basic gist of how to set up something like this. A couple things. in this.
Josh?
Yeah.
There's a couple questions
Yeah.
in the chat. Would you like to take them?
Yes, please.
So Dan asks if there's a benefit to running the calculated field with the case when instead of if then else structure. So it's just asking if
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I want to say yes. I think one reason is that you want to also kind of put this in order. Like if you think that you might, you know, in this case, you might go back and forth. But in general, I think with case statements, you know, you want to kind of order them. Like if you think the first, because as soon as it finds the first one, it's going to jump to end. So it's not going to go through the rest of these. So just from like a performance perspective. So I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think case statements are generally better. I do it because it's easier, honestly. If you have one thing like this demo select parameter that you know there's going to be a bunch of possibilities for, then I always do a case statement.
So mostly preference.
It's my preference. It might be faster as well. I think it's faster, but don't quote me on that.
And then someone asked if Power BI has a tool like Tableau Prep, and I did answer that in the chat in case anyone else is wondering. There is the Power Query editor in Power BI, which is like I would rate like Alteryx up here, Tableau Prep, and then the Power Query editor down there. Yeah. But that's just my opinion.
The Power Query editor is powerful. Like you can do a lot of stuff in it, but it's not intuitive like Prep and Alteryx are. That's what I would say about it.
Yeah, and there's lots of row limits.
So a couple of things that I want to talk about with this dashboard in particular. So if we look at this visualization, one thing I did, so I used that sort of parameter concept, and I have other you know, demographics quotes that I put in here. But one thing that I think is pretty cool, so I gave people the ability to kind of select. So let's say we want to look at all of the business people, you know, business managers, executives, and stakeholders, you know, and see, okay, what were they interested in? What topics were they interested in? And also kind of how that relates to the average. In this case, we can see that the business people are interested in change management. Right? So it can kind of help to validate, you know, some things that we think might be true, and also uncover, you know, some other things that we may not have thought about. And there's also like data scientists is another one. So they're really interested in advanced techniques and not so interested in change management. Thought that was interesting. So the way to do that in terms of like creating this visualization with having the labels be, you know, like positive, negative with the red and the green, is you can create multiple calculated fields and make them specifically, okay, it's only this if it's negative, then it's, you know, the value. Otherwise it's null, and then the positive, it's either positive or only return the, you know, the value if it's positive, and then same you could do for zero. There were a couple of zeros in here, and so that way it will only display, you know, one of the three, and then you can color it the way that you want. Another thing that I did, so with the average, I used a reference line for that. You could also do like a dual axis with a Gantt line. I like to do, so with this, I did a dual axis, but the second one I actually did, you might notice that, so there's a circle and then there's kind of like the outline, so that you can see where things are overlapping. To do that, I have I have the circle, but then I used the shape circle for my second axis, and then played around with the opacity, the transparency, so that you can kind of see where different circles are overlapping. Let's see. A couple other things I wanted to point out. I have a help screen. You may have noticed, or you may have heard about the ability to put in a help screen like this, or like an overlay with using a show or hide containers, and using a picture. One thing, if you have multiple, then it's not, you can't really do it that way, but it's possible to do that if you use a separate, like an actual worksheet, and then you use you can put in multiple background images and use a parameter to cycle through those images. In this case, I only have two. I have like instructions and an example, but it allows me to do that. So I got that from Mark Reed, and I'll post a link to that as well. He has a really easy to understand and follow walkthrough to be able to do that. Another just like quick tip. So when you're doing floating like this, like I am, you can turn on the grid under dashboard, show grid, and that's super helpful to be able to help you kind of line everything up. The icons, I think are pretty effective, and I would recommend the Noun project. You can get icons for free. You're supposed to attribute them if you do that, but I got all these icons from the Noun project, N-O-U-N. I'll drop that link in as well. I think you can pay $40 a year to get it for free, be able to download icons for free. And then it's actually pretty simple. You can so let's say you want to be able to pull these icons in. You can go to Documents, My Tableau repository, then go into Shapes and create a folder. This is where all your icons are going to live. So in this case, I did Texas Tug Interests, and this is where all my icons went. And then when you go to your shapes, then it's gonna come up here. I think if you just hit reload shapes, it'll come up right away. You'll just see that folder with all your icons will come in here. It's super easy. Yeah, I only have a couple minutes left. Couple more tips. And this is just like something that I realized when doing this is to show if you're creating a dashboard that you want people to use, to show it to people, like test it out. And even with people who are not necessarily familiar with Tableau, I showed this dashboard to my wife, and even as I was like watching her play around with it, I was taking notes, like stuff that I didn't even, I hadn't thought of, just because I'm so close to it. And she also had great feedback as someone who doesn't even use Tableau. So that's something I would recommend. And then last point that I want to make is, for me, it can be kind of overwhelming to think about, like, okay, I have all this data and I kind of have an idea of what I want to show, but how do I arrange it? I'll just do, like in this case, I did a Google search for survey dashboards, and not necessarily even Tableau, but I just wanted to see pictures of survey dashboards and how things were arranged. And so I got some inspiration from that. And as well as, I've designed a number, tons of PowerPoint presentations in my consulting career, and just thinking about how would I lay things out on a, like a PowerPoint slide, and kind of taking the angle of, okay, how do I want it to look? And then how can I do that in Tableau, as opposed to, this is what Tableau can do, and then, how can I just arrange this stuff that Tableau can do? So that's what I wanted to cover. Are there any other questions?
Thanks, Josh. There was one question, I think more related to just the capabilities of Tableau Prep. Ankita asks if Tableau, I believe she's talking about Tableau Prep, if it can connect to Microsoft Dynamics 365, which I don't think it can, but I would want smarter people to confirm that.
That I don't know.
Anybody know for sure? That's crickets. Somebody will have to Google it. Okay, let's just check the chat here. Katrina says maybe we should do a prep versus Alteryx session soon. Maybe we'll throw in Power Query in there too. That'd be fun. All right, I want to make sure that we have enough time to get back to Nolan's presentation after we've been held in such suspense. So thank you so much, Josh. This was really awesome and a perfect follow-up, because at our last tug, we had Brad Cantor who showed us how he did that overlay. He created an image in PowerPoint and then overlaid it. So you just took it like one step further and be like, let me show you how you can use parameters with this stuff. So
Yeah,
that's
and let me drop in the links that I mentioned too, so you guys can.
Yeah, please do.
That.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Josh. Nolan, are you here and ready? And you sound great.
I am here. I'm on my phone, so we've taken out every possible variable that could have been the sound from before. So hopefully we'll be good. Let me try to share my screen now.
Perfect.
All right, and are we back to PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
Let's go from current slide. All right, well, I don't know what you could hear or not, but what we were talking about on this screen when we left off was what defines a level of detail in Tableau. And at a high level, the idea is anytime that you're adding dimensions and it changes what the type of data that you're representing with that mark, you've changed your level of detail. So that's any of the sections that are highlighted here in red. Thinking about what a tooltip does, you're just adding information in the mouse over text. And a filter, while it might change the number of marks in your viz, it doesn't change the type of mark or what those marks actually display. Well, why is that important? Because we do have to think about what aggregation and granularity mean. I'm going to use the Superstore data just to talk about this at a high level before we dive into the NTS data. So thinking about Superstore that comes packaged with your version of Tableau, if you were to open it up and drag your sales dimension to columns and your profit to rows, you'd get what we have on the top left, the world's most boring scatter plot. One mark that represents the aggregation of the entire data set together. And then you could start adding dimensions. So in the view down below, I added category to color, subcategory to shape. And you could keep adding every dimension until you get to the lowest level of granularity, where basically every mark equates to a row of data in your data set. Not that that would be good data visualization practice, but you could, in theory, do that. And the reason that I bring this up in this context is it will help us understand what type or flavor of level of detail calculations we want to use in any given situation. So thinking about the idea of your single dot total aggregation at the top of this sort of hierarchy or chain, all the way down to that row level data where every mark is a row. If you're going to use a level of detail calculation that's include, that means you're going to do math at a more granular level than you're showing in your visualization. That is, you're moving downward on this chain. Or in an exclude, you're going to perform math at a higher aggregation and move up the chain. Important to note that this is not intended to be an accurate description of how the Superstore is actually built. It's really a mental model, because while subcategory, it's true, every subcategory belongs to one and only one category, and every product belongs to one subcategory only. Once you start throwing things in like customer name who could buy from multiple categories, the thing breaks. But the idea is moving from single point all the way down to row level data as the mental model. And then the last flavor that we'll talk about here, and there probably is some technical term for flavor that the Tableau engineers would like to use, but that's what I'm going to call these three things: include, exclude, and fixed. So fixed is a special circumstance where you're going to use a level of detail that you're going to always come back with the same fixed answer regardless of whatever dimensions that you put into your view. The next thing that we'll talk about as a introductory concept is how level of detail calculations are put together. So one thing that's nice about Tableau is calculations are pretty intuitive. If you wanted to know profit margin, you can just start typing in sum of profit divided by sum of sales, and it's really straightforward. Level of detail calculations, however, lack that really intuitive sense, but they're not as daunting as they may seem. There's 4 things that you need to remember, and I have them in this presentation all color-coded in this way so you can follow through with them. So you're always going to start and end an LOD with a curly bracket. I have those in purple. It's the only thing that they're used for in Tableau, so if you see them, you know you're dealing with an LOD. Next is that flavor that we talked about. So one of 3 options: include, exclude, or fixed. And then any dimensions will be next. Those are going to be the orange, the dimensions that you're including, excluding, or fixing to. You can add as many as you need for your purpose, and the order that you put them in doesn't matter. You can, in fact, even do calculations on dimensions right within the level of detail calculation. So if, for example, you had order date in the superstore, but you needed to fix to month of order date, you could actually put date trunk month order date right in your expression. And then the last thing is going to be a colon followed by some aggregate expression. So going back to our superstore example, if we were trying to show profit margin, it would be the sum of profit over the sum of sales. This does not work with disaggregates. It has to be an aggregation according to the dimensions that you specify. So that's still probably a little nebulous to those of you who are not familiar. So let's jump into a couple examples. What we're going to start doing is talking about Net Promoter Score. This is a metric that is commonly used by a lot of companies. Bloomberg did a study a number of years ago, but they estimated that about 2/3 of Fortune 1000 companies use NPS in some regard. And this is the question that you've probably seen on many surveys that follows the general form of how likely are you to recommend our product to a friend? And it might be my product, a service, a colleague, a family member, a spouse. But if you've seen a question like that, really, you're probably measuring Net Promoter Score. And this is a scale that usually works on a 10-point scale. The idea is that if you answer a 9 or 10, you're considered a promoter for the product or service. So if we were surveying you in the hotel industry and you stayed at the Radisson Blue Minneapolis downtown, you had a great time and you gave a 10. Next time you have somebody that's going to Minneapolis to stay in a hotel, the idea of NPS is you're going to actively promote that hotel and say you should stay there. If you give a 7 or 8, you're probably not actively recommending it, but you're not hurting the reputation of the product. And if it was a 6 or lower, you're probably going out of your way to tell all of your friends and family to avoid ever using that product. So the way that the metric works is from -100, everyone would be a detractor, and +100 would be everyone is a promoter. So it's going to be a range between those 2 values. How that works in Tableau language would be to sum up the number of responses that are 9s or above, 9s or 10s, so greater than 9, we assign those all to 1. We subtract the detractors, so the number of responses that are 6 or less, we also assign a 1, and then we subtract those 2 values. And you take the whole thing and you divide it by the number of surveys. So if we had 500 surveys that went out to customers 300 responses were a 9 or a 10, 75 were 6 or lower. The resulting math would be you take that 300 minus 50 for 250, you divide it by the total of 500, and you get a net promoter score of 50 or 50%. Organizations will use the metric both ways. That was a little aside to talk about why or the metric itself and how level of detail calculations might help us understand this metric. So this aggregate math works really well if you're looking at an entire portfolio, in my company's case, of hotels in the portfolio, or subsets of hotels, such as by region or by state. It's actually an aggregation even when you're looking at individual hotels. But it doesn't work so well if you want to start asking questions like, what's the average net promoter score of hotels within a region? And the reason we might want to do that is, one thing that we've found is if our hotels have really good service and they know it, and I'm checking out, and the front desk associate might say, "Hey, Mr. Gaskill, how was your stay?" I'm going to say, "Hey, I had a wonderful time, really enjoyed the pool, everything was great, I can't wait to come back." He's going to say, "Hey, great. Listen, we'll be sending you out an email survey in the next couple of days. If you could fill that out, we'd really appreciate it because it helps us out." Nothing insidious there, but that little nudge ends up with getting a lot higher response rate. And so what we find is, when we look at things in an aggregate manner, the hotels that have really positive responses and a lot of reviews tend to wallpaper over sometimes some problems with hotels that need attention. So sometimes it's useful to look at an average. So if I were to ask the question, actually, I'm going to go back here. So if we were to ask the question, what's the average net promoter score of hotels within a region? We're going to use an include calculation. So we want to display the higher level of aggregation, that is region, or in the slide that I'm going to show you is state, but we need to do the NPS calculation at a lower level, that is the hotel level, in order to determine what the average across them is. So that would be purple curly bracket to start the calculation. This is going to be the flavor of include in orange. The dimension that I'm including is the property ID. This is a unique identifier for each hotel code in the data. My light blue purple, followed by the aggregate calculation for net promoter score that we already looked at, and ending with our purple curly bracket. Now that's going to make this into a disaggregate, which means that if I'm dealing with a disaggregate of profit or sales in the Superstore data, if I pull it onto my my visualization, Tableau's default behavior is going to be to sum that up. But we can change that just like we would any other dimension by clicking into the pill and changing the measure option from sum to average. Or you could also take that whole LOD calculation and wrap it around an average, and either way works. So let's take a look at what that looks like in Tableau. And I have a few more things open for my technical problems, but this is what this data set or this sample data set would have looked like in aggregate. So I just have the color scale and the labels turned on for that base calculation that we looked at. But if we wanted to look at the average across each hotel in the state, we say we use that second method. So wrapping the whole thing in an average, include the property ID, net promoter score, and we end up with what we see in this view, which you can tell some states like Georgia, the numbers are fairly similar, but the numbers in a state like Florida differ by a wider margin. And that's probably a result of having a few hotels that have a lot of surveys that are strong performers in NPS. So going back to the PowerPoint, next I want to turn to a different situation. So I want to turn that a similar question on its head and saying, rather than wanting to know the average of the region, I want to know how each hotel's performance compares to the regional average. And so here we're going to use actually the same statement, but make this an exclude statement. So I want to show every hotel and then do the math for how it differs from that regional average. So the exclude, property ID, net promoter score gets me halfway to the actual answer. But what we need, that's the regional average, but I actually want to know how each property's NPS differs from that average. And if I were just to go in and create a calculated field that says Net Promoter Score minus this new field, I'm going to get everybody's favorite Tableau error: cannot mix aggregate and non-aggregate functions with arguments with this function. And if you've used Tableau long enough, you've almost certainly come across this. And even if you understand aggregation really well, sometimes it makes you want to scream. So what's nice about LODs, though, is they give us a path around that error. So I can do one of two things in this situation. I can either turn the exclude into an aggregate, just like we did in the include example, by wrapping it in an aggregation. Now, what I'm doing here is just duplicating the same answer on every row. So I could use a minimum, a maximum, or an average aggregation. They're all going to give me the same answer. The other approach would be to take that NPS calculation and turn it into a disaggregate by putting it in an include or exclude statement. So you're saying, take everything in my visualization and exclude nothing, or include nothing else. And I've turned NPS now into a disaggregate, and I can do math against them either way. And let's take a look at what that looks like in a Tableau example. So here we have a bar chart of, these are property IDs. This is sneak data, because that's what the lawyers like. But if I were to move my mouse over each hotel in the state of Alabama, you'll notice that state NPS is the same value, which is what we're looking for. That is put together by taking state NPS, the one that we just talked about, so that we're wrapping that exclude calculation in a minimum aggregation. And then I just drag that to my, then I have to do the extra step, which is what's the difference between the Net Promoter Score of the hotel and that state average. And then I plotted out on a bar chart and added some color to help tell that story. So that's that example. And then the last one that we'll talk about is fixed calculations. So the use case we'll talk about here is you'll often run into situations where you want to know, in this case, how many hotels or how many stores fall into a given range of a performance metric. So these are going to be questions that often take the form of how many of one thing, or how many of how much is, I guess, how I have that written down. And Tableau does have built-in functionality to do histograms under create bins, but what you may have noticed is that if you go under create, sometimes, or anytime you're working with an aggregate, that option doesn't exist. That's because Tableau wouldn't have any way to know what dimensions to actually create the bins around. But a fixed level of detail calculation gives us a way around that problem by specifying those dimensions explicitly. So the question we're going to try to answer here is, how many hotels have a Net Promoter Score value in groups of 10? And in this example, we use the exact same calculation, but change the flavor again to a fixed level of detail. So purple curly bracket, orange flavor of fixed, the dimensionality in red of property ID, the colon, and Net Promoter Score. And again, that's going to give me a disaggregate, so I can create bins. Let's look at what that looks like in Tableau. So if I were to right click on just the NPS calculation as we looked at it before, you'll notice I only have under create calculated field or parameter. But what I was able to do is NPS fixed to property ID. Again, what we just looked at, fixed at the property code, Net Promoter Score. And that allows me to right click and go to create bins. I've already done that in this viz, but you would get this dialog box here. It would probably look like this because it's going to give you a suggestion. We've already outlined in the question, though, that we want to look at bins of the size of bin. And then all you really need to do is put those bins in your column and a distinct count of properties. So then you have a distribution of how many hotels fall into each range of Net Promoter Score. So I hope that was a little bit helpful in understanding, using the same calculation, how you can use the 3 different flavors of LODs to create different results. And just in the closing minute or two, I want to show you a couple of examples that we've used in dashboards at Radisson Hotel Group of this exact question. Actually, sorry, before I go on to that, I did forget about this slide. You've probably seen what's on the left in a few different contexts. I wish I knew who first came up with this to give them proper attribution, but it is the order of operations of how things are calculated in Tableau. I bring this up about fixed for a specific reason. So fixed calculations do not happen at the same or in the same order of operations where include or exclude do. So because you're fixing to specific dimensions, filters are not responsive to, like quick filters are not responsive to fixed calculations like they are include or exclude. I bring this up because your end users of your dashboard may have some confusion when you expose a filter that doesn't actually do something in your viz. So just be very conscious of that fact that dimension filters happen after fixed calculations. So now we'll take a look at a couple of examples. So this is from an actual dashboard. We call it the NPS Explorer. There's, again, fake data in here, but this is how this is set up. There's 4 things to look at, but the main point here is in this top left is that exact distribution exercise that we just looked at. In this case, the bins are in groups of 25 instead of 50, or I'm sorry, 25 instead of 10. The next example is a snippet from a larger report that our regional directors, when they're going and visiting owners and general managers of our hotels, one of the questions that we often get about KPI performance is, well, how am I doing compared to the rest of the hotels? But we work in a franchise environment, so we can't really disclose the performance of other hotels to a franchisee. But what we are allowed to do is give a range of values and where your individual hotel falls within that range. And this viz actually uses a level of detail on every one of these KPIs, including in the bottom right NPS. So we say across the data set, find the minimum net promoter score and put that, plot that out, find the maximum, plot that out, and then find the value for the hotel that you've selected this report for and plot them all on the same axis. I thought that was a neat example. And then the third one is basically the exact view that we built for a region with the exclude function. So how does each individual hotel within the portfolio of hotels that I'm responsible for, how do they compare to the average? And so the idea is who's bringing up the score or bringing down the score in the region. So is worth noting under this purple bar is actually the hotel codes, and I had to mask those to make our lawyers happy. So, but these do have some real world impacts, and I know we are getting toward the top of the hour, so I wanted to leave a little bit of time, so I will end it there. If you do have questions though, outside of the presentation, feel free to email me. I am Nolan.Gaskill at RadissonHotelsAmericas.com, and I'll turn it back over, or I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. I don't have it pulled up.
I haven't seen any questions come through the chat, Nolan, okay. But Kayla says that she thinks that graphic was actually made by Tableau.
Was it? Yeah, I have asked people if anybody knows who originally made it. Nobody's ever been able to tell me. So
I can't confirm that, but it sounds like a probable guess.
Exactly.
All
right.
Any questions for Nolan on LOD calcs or NPS scores? I'm curious. I was like fiddling around trying to figure out how to make a poll, but I'll just ask the group, like, do you guys find yourselves using one LOD calc more often than the others, or do you treat them all equally? I find myself using fixed more often than basically anything else.
Yep.
Okay.
Find one that works first. The one that works first.
The one that works first. Nice. Let's see. Dana says, as a newbie, do you know of any good tutorial videos on the intro level?
I actually didn't make a slide for it, but I have a list of LOD resources. One that sticks out that was published slightly after they came out was from Barra Barron, is that her name? It was a really good one, but I'll put those in the chat here after I can find the list.
Awesome. Thanks, Nolan. Yeah, it's a topic that I think a lot of people have covered with varying degrees of success. And it's one of those things where no matter how many times someone explains it to you, you have to actually apply it in the real world for it to just kind of click. But once it does, then it can be a real game changer. So awesome. Thank you, Nolan.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have 5 minutes left. I have a hard stop at 4 because I have to take my daughter to dance. But if anyone has a burning question that they would like to ask the group, we can help try to solve that. Otherwise, we can end a couple minutes early.
Can I ask a really quick question? Well, it might not be a really quick question. So has anyone dealt with fiscal year reporting? I have a report that I need to do. The fiscal year is very specific. So it's each month has different start and end dates that don't always align with the calendar month. And they need to do month-to-date summaries, month over month, year over year, like year-to-date totals, all aligned with the fiscal year cutoffs and fiscal month cutoffs. So does anyone have any advice on?
So your fiscal year is like, it's not like a standard 445 or like it's something super custom?
Yeah, it's super custom.
Okay. And it changes every year?
And it changes every year, yes.
Does anyone keep a master file? Like an enterprise calendar table?
I always just keep a table. A lot of times it's just kind of the easiest way to do it. It's a separate table.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of, what I've done in the past is, I've got my calendar table and then I'll have, here the calendar, it's the calendar day, it's the calendar month, it's the calendar quarter, calendar week number, the quarter number, whatever that might be. And then I'll have all of those same columns represented in a fiscal year. And it's kind of like a yearly pain in the butt to go through, but then you keep adding to that table and able to have that year over year history. So does anybody else have any advice for Linda that they can give in 2 minutes? It is a
magic wand.
What's that?
I said, what? No magic wand? Someone?
No magic wand.
Right.
It's something that I think everyone tries to has to deal with at some point in their career. Mm-hmm. And because there's there are some standard fiscal calendars, but a lot of people, they'll do like something slightly different, and then there'll be a year that has 53 weeks in it and throws everything else off, and there's always some sort of nuance that needs to be dealt with. I know that there are a number of blog posts and videos and things of people who have solved for their particular use case that may be varying degrees of relevant to you. So aside from just maintaining an enterprise calendar table that you and everyone else can access within your organization, I would just be like, Google it, Linda. See what you can find.
I tried some Googling and just hadn't come up with a great answer. So
yeah,
thank you.
Yep. Well, when you figure it out, Linda, come back and show us what you did. Okay.
Of course.
All right. Well, on that note, we are looking for presenters for April. It sounds like our May Tableau user group is going to be a conglomeration between other user groups. So the Atlanta user group won this contest to have Francois Agenstadt, I'm probably saying that name, incorrectly, but he's one of the Tableau execs, and so they're having kind of like a little fireside chat with him, and they've opened up that sort of inner experience with him to the rest of the user group. So I think we're going to combine user groups for May. So we won't need presenters for that. Just a minute. And then hopefully, so, you know, the idea is that we'll do a hybrid event in April, and then hopefully, especially with the weather being nice, we could maybe do something outside in June and July, and actually try to get back together in person.
Sorry, Serena, I couldn't copy the links. You will send an email. You will send the information.
From the chat?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. I think I can grab all of these. Yes, yes, I can do that. I will send out the links. Actually, what I'll do is I'll post them in the LinkedIn, because I don't have all your guys' email addresses. Although I probably could send it through Splash, but I'll figure out the best way to get these out to you if you can't copy them from the chat, and make sure you have access. So, sound good?
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, thanks everyone. We will see you next month. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.